If you know or want to know how habits can be the key to finding lasting change in your health, let me tell you, this episode is for you. In this episode, the amazing Sabrina comes in and just shares with us her thoughts, her work around really seeing that habits isn't just about, okay, what we do. It's actually about identity change. And that if we want to live a healthy life, we really need to shift from thinking like, oh, I do this, I run, versus to I am a runner. So this idea of identity change is also something that Sabrina talks about in the Healthiest Years Yet Summit that is happening this week. Her talk goes live on Friday, so you're going to want to make sure you tune into that, where she expounds upon this even more. Sabrina has a beautiful story that she mentions here in this podcast of just growing up in synchronized swimming, body image, diet culture, then going to Italy and just seeing how the difference in how people interacted with food. And so she just uses her own experience and her own work to really support women in healing their relationship with food and really seeing that habits and sustainable habits are the way to really lifelong health transformation. So tune into this episode, listen in, make sure you follow Sabrina. And also make sure you sign up for Your Healthiest Years Yet Summit if you are 40 plus or heading there and want to learn how you can truly create a healthy life in your midlife and beyond, specifically in creating habits as a way to do that, but also shifting your belief around yourself as a way to do that. All right, enjoy this episode, and I hopefully will see you in the summit and talk to you soon. You're listening to the More Than Your Weight podcast, and I am Brianna Wilkerson, your host. You know, over half my life, I really struggled with my relationship with food, my body, and myself. I was constantly finding my worth in my weight, in what I did, in how I looked, and how other people saw me. And healthy living was just about getting that affirmation. But when I started to see that my worth and my health was so much more than my weight, I found breakthrough. Yes, my body got to a weight that it really thrived at, but more so than that, I loved myself. I took care of myself and I cared for my body in the way that it needed. And I am on a mission to help other women do the same. And so through this podcast, my programs, my group, I really am on a mission to help other women find peace with food, feel confident in their bodies again, and develop healthy habits and a lifestyle that's so much more than about their weight. So I'm so excited to journey with you on this podcast, where you'll find solo episodes, guest interviews, and an occasional essential oil episode from time to time. But before you leave, I want you to do a couple things. Make sure you join my Facebook group, More Than Your Weight Women's Community, where you can unpack these episodes, get weekly trainings, monthly challenges, and a lot of support. But also be sure to hit subscribe and rate and review this podcast, because guess what? I want to make sure this podcast pops in your inbox every single week. But then if you are on Instagram, make sure you follow me there, because I show a little bit behind the scenes of my business and my own health journey. So I'm so excited that you're here. Can't wait for you to listen to this new episode. But also, again, just know that you are so much more than your weight. Your health and your worth is so much more than your weight. All right, enjoy the episode, and I hope to talk to you soon. Hey everyone, welcome back to the More Than Your Weight podcast. Today, I am so happy and delighted to have Sabrina on with us today to talk more about habit behavior change as identity change. Just when she and I were talking about something to share on the podcast, I just thought that that was such a great way to approach habit formation and habit breaking old habits and building new habits. It's just like, it's really about identity change. And for those who know, I also love summits, and I'm hosting a summit in a week's time, and Sabrina is one of the speakers. So you can hear a lot more about this topic when you sign up for the summit, and we'll talk more about that at the end. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brianna. Super excited to be here.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about you and your story, your health journey, and what led you to really wanting to help women make changes in their health in a sustainable way.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sabrina, and I am a health, mindset, and habit coach. And my story is pretty typical. So I help women kind of resolve the issues that I went through for a couple of years. So I grew up in a very hyper-focused body image sport, synchronized swimming. Not super common, but it was something that I did for 8 years of my life. And it is a sport is rampant with diet culture, always telling you that you need to be in a smaller body, that you're only worthy if you're a certain size, only making certain teams, certain levels, if you look a certain way. And that gets ingrained in your mindset that your body is the most interesting and valuable thing about you. So when I retired from the sport at the age of 16, I went through the identity crisis of I'm no longer an athlete. And on top of that, I need to manage this food world where I actually have to watch what I eat because I'm no longer training 20 hours a week. I am no longer just burning off anything that I eat. I actually have to be aware of what I put into my body. And because I was so afraid of gaining weight because of everything I've been taught growing up, I did what anyone else would do, which is go online, look at different diets, finding out the best way to lose weight quickly. And I did everything. I did the low carb, I did intermittent fasting, paleo, calorie counting. That was my biggest one. I could probably list off every item in the MyFitnessPal database at this point. And I struggled with that for many, many years of my life, not knowing what was wrong with me, thinking I was broken because I would do something for a couple of weeks, then I would break, I would binge, and I would go through that cycle over and over again. And so it was kind of going through that and thinking that I had to be these extremes in order to be healthy. That led me to realize that what I was doing was actually really, really unhealthy. And it was affecting both my mental and physical health. And everything that I thought was true, because that's what society was teaching me was true, was actually going against what my goals were, which was just to be happy and to be healthy.
That's so good. It's so interesting that you did synchronized swimming. I was just, watching that in the Olympics, and you're like, whoa, this is like a lot of work to kind of synchronize all that. But you're right. Like in those sports, particularly with, wearing swimsuits and all of that, it is very highlighted, like how you look, your body and so forth. And I love how you even talked about, it was post that you actually had to figure out like, okay, I need to watch what I'm eating. And I think a lot of the women who, a lot of women that listen to this are kind of, their 30s or a little older. So where our bodies change, our metabolisms change. And then, yes, we need to watch what we're eating a little bit more, like what worked before, even in regards to exercise might not work now. And so even, just like having to really change our mindset, but also change our habits to adapt. And yeah, I love your story of really, trying everything known to man. That was part of my story too. It's like paleo, let me try it. Keto, let me try it. Like just running the diets to kind of solve something that actually diets aren't meant to solve. And so what led you then into, I mean, obviously you have your own story, but when for you was the moment where you're like, I want to help other women in this way as well?
Yeah, so it was one summer, which I had this opportunity to go to live in Italy and to nanny these Italian kids and live in an Italian family. And I almost didn't go because I was so scared of gaining weight, because I would start eating pasta and bread and cheese, all these foods that I've been taught were fattening and all these foods I've been taught to be afraid of. And I kind of pushed through that comfort zone and said, you know what, I'm not going to miss out on this amazing opportunity to go live abroad just because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to my body. That is ridiculous. So I went there and I started noticing this entirely different food culture where people eat the pasta and eat the bread and eat the gelato. And no one talks about calories and no one talks about the grams of carbs and what they're eating. And there's just no talk of diet culture there. And what I realized by the end of the summer is that I was actually the healthiest and happiest that I had ever been. And I wasn't, quote unquote, watching what I was eating. I wasn't making these efforts to count the calories that I was eating. I was just living my life and I was doing it in a way that was balanced and that was flexible. And it was when I noticed that my whole approach to health had been completely warped by diet culture that I realized like, oh, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. it doesn't have to be restricted and strict. You can actually live a balanced life and still enjoy those foods that you love. And so I came back to Canada and I started doing more and more research, and I started getting really, really deep into it. And I had always been really into health and fitness, but I never thought about making it a career of mine. And it was when I noticed that changing my mindset had changed my life that I decided I need to help other people see the light, because so many people are still so ingrained in diet culture, and it is everywhere around me, that I think more people need to be spreading this message that you do not need to diet and to restrict and be miserable in order to be healthy. And actually, it's probably the worst way to go about if you're trying to improve your health in a sustainable way.
Yeah, so good. I love it. I love how you share that. It's almost like all of us have that catalytic event where it's just like this aha moment in our own journey where we're like, I can totally enjoy the foods I love or eat well even, and then not feel like I'm on a diet or not feel like it's so restrictive. For me, it was when I actually did the Whole30, which people are like, oh my gosh, that's a very restrictive program. But for me, it was like the fact that I could eat and recreate foods that were like, no, like spaghetti instead of spaghetti squash was just like, I can eat real food, feel good, not give in to my cravings, and actually enjoy it. Like, I need to just help other women and know that, they don't have to be a slave to food. They don't have to be a slave to diet anymore. And I just love what you're saying. Like, some cultures are different. Every culture is different. And, in Italy and so forth, it was, not necessarily focusing on like, oh, bread is bad. And actually no food is quote unquote bad. Are there certain foods that are more nutritious? Yes. So let's eat those more often. But and I just love your story because I resonate so much. It's just the mindset shift. And then when the mindset shifts, so does our habit. So let's talk a little bit about that. So, we were talking and you mentioned how, yes, we want to have healthy habits, but how do we really see that healthy habit change is also identity change? So tell us a little bit more about that, or even, maybe you can start here. What's a common mistake people make when trying to change their habits and lifestyle in order to improve their health?
Yeah. And this is a mistake that I made too, is we always start with the end in sight. And I talk about the 3 layers of habit change. And it kind of, you have to look at it like the layers of an onion. And what most people do is they go very surface level, which is the outside layer, which is they are outcome based habits, right? So I want to lose weight. I want to write a book. I want to win a race. It's like we focus on this outcome that we want to achieve. And the biggest problem with that is that we are so focused on the finish line that we don't care about the process. We don't care about sustainability. We just think, I just need to get to that goal. I'm sure that you've heard this from your clients or people that you've spoken to, because I hear it all the time. This is, when I lose weight, then I'll be happy, or then it'll be easier, or then I'll figure it out. And we just focus on this finish line. But the problem with that is it feeds into that yo-yo effect, that cycle, because when you hate the process, when you do it in a way that requires you to put your life on hold and you have to focus everything in your life on this goal, what happens when you get to that finish line? What happens when you get to that goal? Well, then you're faced with two decisions. Either number one is, okay, well, now I'm at this goal. I have to keep living this way for the rest of my life, which is most of the time physically impossible, right? It is physically impossible to live in that kind of restriction, in that kind of focus for the rest of your life. Or number two, which is, I'm going to start relaxing a little bit more. I'm going to start eating those foods again that I've been restricting for so long. I'm not going to work out 7 days a week, 2 times a day. I'm going to start relaxing a little bit more because now I'm at my goal weight. And because you never actually changed your identity in the process, you always just forced through those habits. You white knuckled it. You used your willpower, but you didn't go to the deep rooted level of identity change, which is the most important. Well, then when you get to that finish line, you start falling back into your old habits. You start falling back into your default identity because you never actually did the deep work that was needed in order to enjoy the process and change your beliefs, change your thoughts, and change the reasons why you do things in the first place, which is why most people say, I can't be consistent. I can't stick to anything. I always fall back into my old habits because they were outcome based in the first place.
That's so good. I love the onion analogy, right? Just like we always focus on the result. And honestly, we're taught in just the society to focus on the result. It's like, it's about getting that car or getting that house. It's not about like making sure you save up money and you're not going to going out all the time. Like no one talks about the process, because sometimes the process isn't sexy. Let's just talk about, like, sometimes it isn't like, you're seeing the scale change or your clothes fit better right away. It may take time. And actually showing up to work out every day, meal prepping every week is not always like so exciting that you just want to do it. So I love how you talked about, like, yeah, being so focused on the outcome versus the process. Before we talk a little bit more about identity change, I would love for you to just talk about, you mentioned that there's 3 types of like habits. Like, what are those layers? And then maybe we can go into the other part.
Yeah, so we already talked about the outside layer, which is the outcome base, right? Like focusing on the results. Then we're going to go a step deeper, which is being the process layer, right? So focusing on the process, on the things that need to be done in order to achieve that result. And some people do get to that point, right? We start meal planning, we start eating healthier, we start working out. Those are the actions that are going to get you to the results. But you're still kind of in the middle of that onion. You're not getting to the deep-rooted thing. And in that second layer, there is still kind of that fake it till you make it, that willpower of anyone can eat healthy or work out for a couple of weeks. Anyone can muster up that motivation for a short period of time. But that third layer, which is the deepest one, which is the one that most people never address, is identity change, right? Identity change as a way of truly changing your behaviors for the long term. Because most people, they have these deep-rooted beliefs that are either conscious or subconscious that drive their actions every single day. So to give you an example, if you believe that you are an emotional eater, or if you believe that you are addicted to sweets, or that you are lazy, or that you're unmotivated, if you don't address those beliefs and those thoughts that you tell yourself every single day, then your brain eventually is going to come back around. And whenever things are going well, or whenever you feel like you're on the right track, your brain feels uncomfortable because maybe your actions don't align with this initial identity that you have for yourself. And if your actions don't align with that, well, what your brain is going to do is, okay, well, I feel uncomfortable here because there's a disalignment between your actions and who you truly believe that you are. And that's when we start self-sabotaging, right? Because your brain wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you comfortable in this identity, in this bubble that you have for yourself. So that's why people are like, I don't understand why I keep, I'm doing well for a couple of weeks and then I'll emotional eat or I'll get lazy again. Well, that's because you have these deep-rooted beliefs that maybe you think that you're always going to struggle. Maybe you think that you're always going to have to yo-yo diet. Maybe you never truly had hope that this was going to work, but you thought if I just meal plan and I just white knuckle through it, then things are going to get easier. And a lot of the times it doesn't, because your identity has never shifted into a new person that you can become.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I think that we talk a lot about that here. It's our mindset, our beliefs, because our beliefs are, Jen Sincero in her books, You Are a Badass at Making Money, or whichever one of those, talks about how your beliefs drive your thoughts, which drive your words, your feelings, then your actions and your reality. And so often we're trying, what you're saying, change our reality or change our outcome without changing our beliefs. And a lot of these beliefs, they sometimes operate at a subconscious level. We don't even know that we like feel those or think those. Sometimes we are aware, but what you're saying, we're not willing to address those because it's hard. Those are deep. Those go down to like what you believe to be true does guide your, your worldview, right? And to guide your
Mhm.
actions. And so to rewrite those thoughts that you've believed for years, for decades even, is really hard work. But I think that's the beauty of coaching. That's the beauty of podcasts like this. Like, you're not alone in that, because there is a rise of people who are saying, okay, enough is enough. It's not saying that diets are bad. It's just they're probably not going to give you the solution you want when you're coming from a certain point of view. So say if someone was like, okay, I want to start in that deeper layer, what are like just a couple few tips on really working on changing their habits through changing like that identity change?
Well, number one is identifying what your beliefs are in the first place. I've been working with a client who, for the couple of weeks, she was able to admit after we had that breakthrough that she was just talking the talk, right? She was going through the motion of the coaching, but there was still that deep rooted belief that she was never going to figure this out, that she was hopeless. But because she never addressed that, because there was always that wall that she put there, because it is uncomfortable. It is super uncomfortable to be able to acknowledge, wow, this is what I believe about myself. And this is the reason why my actions have been the way they are, why my reality is the way that it is. Because of these deep-rooted beliefs, it's uncomfortable. So number one is to get super clear on what your initial beliefs are. And what's important too is don't judge them, right? There's no judgment here. There's no criticism. It's just, and I recommend, I'm a huge fan of journaling. So I recommend taking those thoughts and putting it down on paper and to look at all of those beliefs that you have for yourself. And then the next step is to ask yourself, is this factually true? Right? Like, if I were to bring this to a court of law, would everyone be able to agree that this is factual? Because that's the biggest problem, is that people think that these beliefs are fact and it is truth, and they will argue with it and they say, well, this is not just something I believe. I have proof that this is actually true. And that's the deeper and the more real a belief feels will be dependent on how much proof you have about it. So there's people who will have dieted for 20, 30, 40 years of their life. They've struggled with their health. They've struggled with emotional eating or binge eating or sweets cravings for most of their life. So because they have 20, 30, 40 years of proof, of evidence to show for it, they don't even think that there is a different reality that's possible for them. And that's a big indication of a fixed mindset, thinking that because I've always been this way, there's no way of changing. And so being able to identify that maybe I think that these are true, but there's a possibility that a different reality is possible for me. That's the first step, right? And to dismantling that, the fact that maybe just because you have proof for it, it does not mean that your future has to be your past. I always use this example. A toddler who is learning how to walk, just because they've never walked before, when they fall as they're learning how to walk, are parents going to be like, oh, well, they've never walked before, so I guess we're just going to give up on them ever walking? Just because you've never done something before, it has no relation to what you're capable of achieving in your future. So I would say number one is to address what's going on in your mindset first, because if you don't address your identity and your thoughts and your beliefs, then it doesn't matter how good your intentions are, how good your willpower is. You can white knuckle through the meal planning, the healthy eating, and the exercising, but your brain is always going to come back and it's going to try to sabotage you when things are going well.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I think that's the core work of that I do, whether it's with my one-on-one clients or my 6-week boot camp, is that let's just get to the nitty gritty of what you actually believe to be true. And then I loved what you said, like, if you were to take this to a court of law, would everyone agree? And some people might say, yeah, they would, but then it's like getting deeper, like probably not. It's probably you that just thinks that. But, and I think we have, we have developed beliefs. People have portrayed certain things on us or projected things on us. But I really love what you even said, like just because it's never been done before in your life, just because you've never had sustainable health or sustainable weight management or never really broken free from emotional eating does not mean it's not possible. And I think it's learning to trust yourself again and actually creating proof for yourself. And so I did a recent podcast on learning to trust yourself again. And I talked about like, sometimes we just don't have proof. Like, can I actually continue walking 5 minutes a day? And it's like, oh no, I've never done that before. Well, it's like, it doesn't mean you can't try now. And I think we are in that fixed mindset because I think, as you're saying, diet culture or black and white way of approaching things tells us that if you haven't done it before, it's not possible. And really just opening ourselves up to that growth mindset that says that, okay, it's growth mindset says, hey, this hasn't happened before, but maybe it can change. And so having that little bit of hope and belief is hard, especially if, I've had calls with women who have struggled with emotional eating for decades, like longer than I've lived. And I can only imagine how hard it may be to feel like change is possible. But without that belief, it's really hard to have that. And that's why we have coaches, and that's why we have like more podcasts and all these sort of resources to help people increase their belief, not just in that it's possible, but in themselves. Right. And so I love it. I mean, we can keep talking all about this, but you are going to be talking way more about this in the summit coming up, the Your Healthiest Years Yet Summit. Ladies, if you haven't heard about that, that is a summit all about helping women as, late 30s, 40s, 50s, really just see that they can have their healthiest years yet. Just because we're getting older, just because our body and life changes does not mean that we can't be healthy. And this conversation around habit and identity change is going to be huge as you listen to that. So you're going to want to make sure you sign up in the show notes so you can listen to Sabrina talk way more about this. So Sabrina, as we're wrapping up, like what's one tip or piece of encouragement that you want to leave women around around habit and identity change?
So I would say that get rid of this all or nothing mentality, thinking that you need to overhaul your entire life, overhaul your diet, your exercise in order to make a big change in your life. And this is what I do with my clients. If you want to start changing your identity, then start small and build off of that. And you mentioned, learning to trust yourself. And this does relate to your identity. You want to start by doing habits that can become part of who you are. So if you've never exercised before, don't try to go from 0 to working out 5 days a week for 30 minutes, because then you're doing the white knuckling and relying on willpower. Instead, focus on becoming someone who moves their body every day. So maybe that means 5 minutes a day. And no matter what, without fail, you will move for 5 minutes, whether that's going for a walk or a bike ride or yoga, but trusting yourself to be able to follow through on those intentions. If you are someone who wants to be healthy, who wants to eat well, start by eating 1 vegetable a day. And you are someone who follows through on eating that 1 serving of vegetable every single day. Starting small, and then it's going to snowball, because then you're going to realize, wow, I am someone who follows through on these goals. I am becoming that person. I'm not someone who runs. I'm a runner. I'm not someone who exercises. I'm an athlete. And making it become part of who you are instead of being an action that you just do every single day.
So good. Yeah, I think one of the things that I do with clients is that, affirmations, some people feel those are woo-woo, but I actually think they work. So what you're saying is like, I had a client who said, okay, well, I, just felt like she wasn't exercising enough. And then we really looked at it and I just was like, actually, you are someone who exercises, like you're moving all the time, but she was having trouble creating that intentional time for walking. And the affirmation we ended up creating was just like, I'm someone who walks daily. Like it just was like saying that I am someone, what you're saying, who does this versus I do this. Like, so
Yes.
just like, making what you're saying, making our statements about ourselves to really be about who we are versus what we do. in a positive way, because we're actually doing that all the time negatively. We're saying like, I am, I don't like saying this word, but some people say I'm fat or I'm overweight or whatever. Like they're actually attaching something that's not helpful to their identity. So let's actually start rewriting our identity by attaching those positive, those truth, those helpful thoughts, those beliefs that are going to move us forward.
Or same thing, I'm an emotional eater.
Right.
No. You are someone who emotionally eats.
Right.
But there is a way to solve that. So that is the thing, like identity can be a double-edged sword because it can either hinder you or it can change your life.
Right. Exactly. So love this conversation. Obviously we could talk way more about it, but we want you to guys to sign up for the summit. And even if you missed the summit, this was still a great talk, but you could also get it in lifetime access. So as we wrap up, I know you have a freebie to kind of help women, even dive deeper into this when it comes to eating. What is this freebie, and tell us more about it?
Yeah, so this is something that I give my own clients, and it's been a game changer for anyone who struggles with binge eating or emotional eating. We talked a lot about that, or feeling like you're out of control around food. And the biggest way to finally get in tune with your eating habits and become aware of what's causing them, not some kind of meal plan, not some kind of calorie counting, being aware of why you do why you eat the way you eat, is this mindful eating practice. So I have a 7-day mindful eating challenge. So every day you get a tip, a strategy, a task to implement into your everyday life in order to start bringing intention and mindfulness and awareness to your eating habits and understand what you do every day. Why? Because so many of us live on autopilot. We eat without thinking, and it's just taking a pause and realizing how to enjoy your eating experience so that you can start living a balanced life and bring pleasure into eating again.
So good. Love it. Love the idea of just being mindful around it. So I will link that in the show notes, but tell us if people wanted to find you on social media or your website, where they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me at my website at sabrinamagna.com, or on Instagram, sabrina.magna.health, or on Facebook, Sabrina Magna Health Coaching and Consulting.
So great. I will make sure to link those in. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and just the idea of really helping women see that habits is all about really getting to the identity. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Like you said, we could talk about this for hours. So I'm excited for the summit.
Yes. Awesome. Well, everyone, make sure you check out everything in the show notes. I will put the summit link. I will put all Sabrina's links there, and you can get in touch with her. All right. Bye.
Wow. What a great episode. I'm learning so much about the different types of habits, outcome, process, identity habits, and identity change, and really how to shift your mindset and even actually incorporate all three of those into your life to really have a complete package of really how to take care of yourself practically through habits. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you follow Sabrina, check her out, but also make sure you join the Your Healthiest Years Yet Summit that is happening this week, all throughout the week. And her talk goes live on Friday with other amazing speakers to really dive more deeper into this, amongst other things. And so I hope you join us for this free summit. And if you want to purchase the summit and have lifetime access, you can still do that. Even if you're listening to this 3 months from now, you can still have lifetime access. Some of the bonuses will go away, but you can still watch all the 33 plus talks and get the workbook and so forth. So go check out details for all of that below. And I hope to see you this week and talk to you soon. That's a wrap. That's another episode of the More Than Your Weight podcast. I hope you're leaving encouraged and inspired and empowered to go out there and know that your health and your worth is so much more than your weight. So before you go, again, do a couple things. Make sure you join my Facebook group, the More Than Your Weight Women's Community, where there are daily posts, weekly trainings, and just a lot of support to unpack these episodes, as well as get support in your More Than Your Weight journey. Make sure you also follow me on Instagram, where I show my behind the scenes of my own health, but also just how I care for others along the way. And then make sure you subscribe and rate and review this podcast, because more women will see that, but also you'll get new episodes every single week. All right. I'll see you on the next episode and can't wait to support you more.